There are moments in life that you think are random. A wrong turn, a flat tire, a stranger crying on the side of a highway. But what if I told you that some moments aren't random at all? What if I told you that on a cold Tuesday night in November, a man named Marcus stopped his truck on Interstate 40 to help a woman he had never met in his life, and that woman knew things about his dead wife that no one was supposed to know. Stay with me, because by the time this story is over, you're going to question everything you believe about coincidence. Welcome to Crest Stories, the place where real human stories remind us that life is far stranger, far more painful, and far more beautiful than we ever imagined. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, because today's story is one I've been holding on to for weeks. I'm trying to find the right words. I don't think any words are truly right for this one, but I'm going to try. Marcus Delaney was 41 years old. He lived in a small house on the eastern edge of Knoxville, Tennessee, the kind of house with a porch light that stays on all night. Not because anyone is coming home, but because the man inside can't quite bring himself to turn it off. He had a truck with 140,000 miles on it. He had a job as a structural engineer. Good job, steady job, the kind of job that gave him just enough to stay busy and not enough to stop thinking. He had a 9-year-old daughter named Lily. And he had a grief so deep, so constant, so woven into the fabric of every single day, that most mornings, the only reason he got out of bed was because Lily needed breakfast. His wife, Diane, had died 2 years earlier. Breast cancer, stage 4. She had been diagnosed 11 months before she passed, which means for 11 months, and Marcus had watched the woman he loved, the woman who laughed too loud at her own jokes, who burned every batch of cookies she ever made, who cried at commercials. He had watched her disappear, piece by piece, until one morning in September she was simply gone. Lily had been 7, old enough to understand that mommy wasn't coming back, young enough that she still sometimes set a place for her at the dinner table. Marcus never corrected her when she did that. He just quietly put the plate away after Lily went to bed, and then he'd sit at that kitchen table in the dark for longer than he would ever admit to anyone. People who knew Marcus before Diane's illness said he used to be the loudest person in any room. The guy who remembered every birthday, organized every cookout, saw a hugged too long and too hard and didn't care what anyone thought about it. After Diane died, he became the man who answered fine to every question. How are you doing, Marcus? Fine. Is Lily okay? She's fine. Are you okay? I'm fine. 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 It's the loneliest word in the English language, and Marcus had turned it into armor. His sister, Renee, told me later, and I want you to remember her name, Renee, because she matters in this story. Renee said she used to call Marcus every Sunday night just to hear his voice, just to make sure he was still there. She said sometimes he wouldn't pick up, and she'd sit by the phone for an hour, waiting. She said the not knowing was the worst part. But here's the thing about Marcus Delaney. Underneath all that fine, underneath all that armor, he was still him. He still stopped to help strangers with groceries in parking lots. He still left his neighbor, old Mr. Featherstone, a bag of firewood every time there was a cold snap, never saying a word about it. He still showed up. Not fully, not the way he used to, but he showed up. And on the night of November 14th, that instinct to show up changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Marcus had been driving back from a worksite 2 hours outside Knoxville. A bridge inspection. One of those jobs that ran 3 hours over schedule because the subcontractor hadn't filed the right permits, and Marcus had spent most of the afternoon on the phone trying to sort it out, which meant he was running on 4 hours of sleep, a gas station sandwich, and the last cold dregs of a coffee he'd bought that morning. He was tired, bone tired, and the kind of tired that gets inside your eyes. Lily was with his mother for the night. His mom, Patricia, would take her on these long work days. So Marcus had no reason to rush. He just drove. Radio low. Headlights cutting through the dark. It was one of those nights where the highway feels like the loneliest place on earth. You ever had that feeling? Where you're surrounded by cars and movement and the whole machinery of the world just grinding forward. And you feel completely, utterly alone? That was Marcus on Interstate 40. Just him and the road and the ghost of a woman who wasn't there. He saw the hazard lights first. Orange blink, orange blink, orange blink. Off to the right shoulder, maybe a quarter-mile ahead. He almost didn't stop. He told me that later, and I appreciated his honesty. He said his brain ran the calculation. It's late, you're tired, someone else will stop, just keep going. But his hands moved before his brain finished the thought. He pulled over. The car was a blue Honda Civic, maybe 10 years old, sitting at an angle on the gravel shoulder. One rear tire completely flat. Not just low, but shredded, like it had blown at speed. There was a small suitcase in the back seat that Marcus could see through the window. And there was a woman sitting on the hood of the car. Not standing, not pacing, not on the phone. Sitting on the hood, arms wrapped around herself, head down. Crying. Not quietly either. The kind of crying that has been going on for a while. The kind that's moved past the tears into something rawer. Marcus pulled up behind her, put on his own hazards, and got out. "Hey," he said. "You all right?" She looked up. The woman was maybe late 30s. Dark hair pulled back, though half of it had come loose. She had the look of someone who had been put together earlier in the day. Nice blouse, earrings. But the night had taken its toll. Her mascara had tracked down both cheeks. Her eyes were swollen. She looked at Marcus for a moment like she wasn't sure he was real. "Flat tire," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "I can see that," Marcus said. "You got a spare?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "I have half a spare. I put it on 3 weeks ago when this happened the first time, and I never got around to replacing the full tire, and now—" She stopped, pressed her lips together, looked away. I know how that sounds." "It sounds like life got busy," Marcus said. "Simple, no judgment." He went around to the trunk. "Here's what I want you to notice about that moment." Marcus didn't ask her what was wrong. He didn't probe. He didn't try to fix the crying. He just went to fix the tire. Because Marcus knew, the way only someone who has survived real loss can know, that sometimes people don't need you to ask questions. Sometimes they just need you to show up and do the next useful thing. The spare was in rough shape, but it would hold. Marcus had jumper cables, a decent jack, and the kind of quiet competence that comes from years of being the only one available to handle things. He worked. She sat on the hood and watched him. After a few minutes, she said, "You don't have to do this." "I know," he said. Another minute of silence. "I'm Carol," she said. He looked up briefly. "Marcus." "Thank you." "Eat Marcus." "Don't thank me yet. Let me see if this spare is going to hold." They stayed like that for maybe 20 minutes. Him working, her watching, the highway humming with the occasional rush of a passing truck. And then Carol said something. She said, "Do you ever feel like you're being pushed somewhere? Like something is making you go a direction you didn't plan?" Marcus paused what he was doing. He looked at her. "What do you mean?" Carol had her arms wrapped around herself again. She was looking out at the highway. "I wasn't supposed to be on this road tonight," she said. "I was supposed to take 75. I've taken 75 100 times. But tonight, I went a different way. And then, the tire—" She shook her head. "Never mind, I'm sorry. You're trying to work and I'm being weird." "You're not being weird," Marcus said. He looked back down at the tire, but something had shifted in him. Something quiet and electric. The tire was changed. Marcus stood up, wiped his hands on a rag he kept behind the seat, and told Carol the spare would get her where she was going, but she needed to keep it under 55 and get a proper tire first thing in the morning. She nodded. She was looking at him in a way that Marcus would later describe as strange. Not threatening, not flirtatious. Just searching, like she was trying to find something in his face. "Can I ask where you're headed?" he said. Not nosy, just making sure she'd be okay. Carol was quiet for a moment. "Knoxville," she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's where I live." "I know," she said. Marcus went still. "I'm sorry?" Carol closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, like there was a resolve in her face that hadn't been there before, like she had made a decision. "I'm sorry," she said. "That came out wrong. I meant, I'm going to Knoxville. I just moved there. 3 days ago. I don't know anyone there." She paused. "I don't know why I said it like that." Marcus studied her for a moment. "Okay," he said slowly. But the word, "I know," was still sitting in the air between them. In his truck on the way home, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about it. He told himself it was nothing. She misspoke. She was upset, she was exhausted, she said something awkward, and it meant nothing. He turned the radio up. He thought about Lily, about what he'd make for breakfast, about the bridge inspection report he still had to write. He did not think about the woman on the highway. He did not think about the way she'd looked at him. He definitely did not think about the fact that she was now driving to the same city he was driving to, behind him on the same stretch of road, her headlights a small, steady glow in his rearview mirror for the next 20 minutes before she took a different exit. He did not think about any of that. He was fine. He didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, Marcus picked Lily up from his mother's, made scrambled eggs, dropped Lily at school, and went to work. By noon, he had mostly convinced himself that the whole thing was just a strange night on a lonely highway and nothing more. And then his phone rang. It was a Knoxville number he didn't recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail, but his hands, again, moved before he thought about it. "Hello?" A pause, then, "Marcus? This is Carol, from last night. The tire." He sat up straighter in his chair. "Carol. Hi, how did you get this number?" "You left your business card in my car," she said. "It must have fallen out of your pocket when you were getting the jack. I'm so sorry to call, I wanted to return it, and I wanted to say thank you again in a more—" She stopped. He could hear her exhale. "I wanted to ask you something, and you can absolutely say no. I would completely understand." Marcus waited. "Can we meet for coffee?" He should have said no. Everything logical in him said no. He was a grieving widower with a 9-year-old daughter and no business getting tangled up in the story of a stranger on a highway. "Sure," he said. "When?" They met at a small coffee shop on Market Square, the kind of place with exposed brick and mismatched chairs that Knoxville does particularly well. Marcus got there early. He ordered a black coffee and sat at a table by the window and told himself, one more time, that this was nothing. Just a courtesy. Just decency. He'd helped someone. She wanted to say thanks. That was the whole story. Carol arrived 5 minutes later. In daylight, cleaned up, she looked different. Calmer, steadier. But there were still shadows under her eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. She sat down, ordered a tea, held the cup with both hands like she needed something to hold on to. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Of course," Marcus said. Silence. He waited. Carol stared into her tea for a long moment. Then she said, "How long has your wife been gone?" Music drops to almost nothing. Marcus went very still. "Excuse me?" "I'm sorry," Carol said quickly. I I know that's an invasive question, and I know you don't know me, and I know I have no right to ask. But I've been up all night, and I don't know how to do this any other way except to just... She looked at him. How long? Marcus's jaw tightened. 2 years, he said. Flat, careful. Who told you about my wife? Carol set down her cup. She reached into her bag, and she pulled out a photograph. She slid it across the table. Marcus looked at it, and the world stopped making sense. The photo was of Diane. His Diane. But not a photo he had ever seen before. Not from their wedding, not from their years together. This was Diane Young. Maybe 22, some 23. Standing outside a building Marcus didn't recognize, laughing at something off camera, her hair longer than he'd ever known it. She looked so alive, it hurt. Where did you get this? Marcus's voice came out barely above a whisper. She gave it to me, Carol said. That's not possible, Marcus said. Diane has been dead for 2 years. I know, Carol said. She gave it to me 8 years ago, before you met her. I need you to understand what happened in Marcus in that moment. Because it wasn't just shock. It wasn't just confusion. It was the particular vertigo of a man who thought he knew the shape of his grief, who had spent 2 years learning every contour of his loss, suddenly realizing that the woman he mourned was also a stranger, that Diane had a life before him that he didn't know, and that somewhere in that life was this woman who had not been on this road by accident. How did you know her? Marcus asked. Carol's eyes filled with tears, but she kept them in check. She had clearly practiced this. We were in the same support group, she said. 8 years ago, in Nashville. I had just lost a pregnancy, my second miscarriage in a year, and Diane had just been diagnosed with... She stopped. Marcus stared at her. With what? Carol's voice dropped to barely a whisper. With her first cancer, Marcus. Her first... Marcus stopped. His whole face changed. What do you mean, her first? Carol looked at him with the terrible compassion of someone delivering a blow they cannot soften. Diane had cancer twice, she said. The first time was 8 years ago, before she met you. She was 26. As she went into remission, she never told anyone, or almost anyone. She was terrified that if people knew, they'd treat her differently, that any man she loved would see her as... Carol's voice broke slightly. She called it being pre-grieved. She didn't want to be someone's tragedy before she'd even had a life. The coffee shop noise continued around them. Someone laughed at the counter. Marcus sat absolutely motionless. She never told me, he said. I know, said Carol. That's why I'm here. I want to stop here for a moment, because I know some of you are feeling something complicated right now. Maybe you're angry on Marcus's behalf. How could she not tell him? How do you marry someone? How do you have a child with someone and not tell them something that fundamental about yourself? I get that reaction. I understand it. But I also want you to sit with something. Diane was 26 years old when she was first diagnosed. 26. She had just started building her life, and she fought, alone, mostly, in a city far from her family. And she won. She got clear. She got to step back into the world as a healthy person. And then she met Marcus, and she fell in love. And every day she had to make a choice. Do I tell him today? Carol told Marcus everything she knew. She and Diane had stayed loosely in touch over the years. Birthday texts, occasional calls. Nothing deep, but real. The kind of friendship forged in a crisis that stays true even across distance and time. When Diane's cancer came back, the second time, the final time, she had called Carol. She called Carol because Carol was the one person who knew the full story. And the one person she didn't have to explain the 8-year-old secret to. And in that call, Diane had asked Carol for a favor. She asked me, Carol said slowly. To find you, after she was gone. She wanted me to tell you the truth. All of it. She said she'd tried to write it in a letter, but she could never finish it. She said she couldn't stand the idea of you reading it alone. Carol looked down at the table. She said she wanted you to hear it from a human being, from someone who could look at your face. Marcus said nothing. She also said, Carol's voice wavered. She steadied herself. She said that if I ever actually managed to find you and sit down with you, I should tell you that she was sorry, that keeping the secret wasn't about not trusting you. It was about... She paused, choosing the words carefully. She said it was about wanting to be your wife before she was ever your cautionary tale. Marcus pressed the back of his hand to his mouth. He sat like that for a long time. The coffee shop continued to bustle around them, utterly indifferent. Why now? Marcus finally said. You said she died 2 years ago. Why are you coming to me now? Carol nodded slowly. She had expected this question. Because I was a coward, she said simply. I kept telling myself I'd do it when the time was right. But the truth is, I was scared. I didn't know you. I didn't know how you'd react. I was afraid you'd be angry at her, or at me, or that it would make the grief worse instead of better. I kept putting it off. She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small envelope. She set it on the table between them. And then 3 months ago, I was going through some old boxes. I was moving, clearing things out, and I found this. Diane sent it to me before she passed. I don't know how I missed it. I think I wasn't ready to see it. She nudged the envelope toward him. It's for you. His name was on it, in Diane's handwriting. I can't tell you everything that was in that letter, partly because it was deeply private, and partly because Marcus, when he shared pieces of this story with me, said that some of it is still his and Lily's alone to hold. But he did tell me some of it. And with his permission, I'll tell you what he shared. Diane wrote about the first cancer, about the fear, about the strange, terrible freedom of remission, how she had walked out of the oncologist's office the day she got the clear scan and sat in her car for 45 minutes unable to move, just weeping, because she didn't know how to be a person who was going to live. She wrote about meeting Marcus 18 months later, about how she had told herself on their second date that she would tell him on the third. And then, on the third date, she told herself she'd tell him when it felt more serious. And then, when it felt serious, she was afraid of losing him. And then they were engaged, and telling him felt like a betrayal of how beautiful that moment was. And then Lily was coming, and she was so happy, she was so unbelievably happy, that she couldn't make herself reach back into the dark. She wrote, I know this was wrong, I know it. But Marcus, you made me feel like a woman who was going to live forever. And I had never felt that before. I didn't want to let go of that feeling even for one conversation. Then she wrote about the second diagnosis, about how the cruelty of it, of the cancer coming back after she'd finally built the life she'd always wanted, was something she couldn't fully articulate. She wrote about Lily, pages and pages about Lily. She wrote about how she used to watch Lily sleep and think, this child doesn't know yet that the world is hard. And there was something so precious about that not knowing. And she wrote, near the end of the letter, Marcus, my love, my anchor, the thing I want you to know, the thing I needed to tell you, is that you didn't fail me. You need to hear that because I know you, and I know you've been going over every moment and wondering what you missed and why you didn't see it. You didn't miss anything. I hid it from you because I needed to, not because I didn't trust you. Because I trusted you so much that I knew if I told you, you would spend our entire life loving me like I was already leaving. And I didn't want that love. I wanted the other kind. The kind where you're just a little careless with each other because you both think there's all the time in the world. That's what you gave me. Thank you. Marcus did not go home right away after that coffee. He sat in his truck in the parking garage for a long time. He called his sister Renee. You remember Renee. And he talked to her for 2 hours. She later told me it was the most he had talked in 2 years, that he cried in a way she hadn't heard since the funeral. He also said, somewhere in the middle of that call, something that Renee told me she will remember for the rest of her life. He said, she was trying to protect me, even from the beginning. And she was trying to protect me. And Renee said, yeah, Marcus, she was. And he said, I don't know if I'm angry or grateful. And Renee said, I think you might be both, and I think that's probably okay. There are people who heard pieces of this story and felt frustrated with Diane. I understand that. There is a real argument that spouses owe each other full transparency, that secrets, however well-intentioned, become their own kind of betrayal, that Marcus deserved to make an informed choice about the life he was building. That argument is not wrong. But here's what Marcus said to me when I asked him how he'd processed that. He said, here's the thing. If she had told me on date 3, if she'd sat me down and said, hey, I had cancer once, it's gone, but you should know. I like to think I would have handled it gracefully. I like to think I would have been supportive and kind and everything she deserved. He paused. But she's right that I would have loved her differently. I don't know if I could have helped it. I would have loved her with a part of my brain always in the background calculating risks and timelines and contingencies. And maybe she knew that about me better than I knew it about myself. He looked out the window. She gave me 8 years of loving her like she was going to live forever. And I did. I loved her like that. Fully. No reservations. He turned back. I don't know if I can call that a lie. I think it might have been a gift. I've thought about that a long time. The line between a secret and a gift. The way the people we love sometimes make choices about what to share and what to protect. And how those choices, even when they're imperfect, can be born of a love so deep it bends the rules of honesty into something that looks different from the outside than it does from the inside. I'm not saying Diane was right. I'm saying she was human. I'm saying she was a 26-year-old woman who almost died alone in a studio apartment in Nashville, and then somehow impossibly got to live and fall in love and have a daughter and build a life that felt, against all odds, like the life she was supposed to have. And she wanted to hold it, and she held it as long as she could. Marcus went home that night and hugged Lily for a very long time. Lily, being 9, eventually squirmed away and said, Dad, you're being weird. He laughed. The real kind, not the fine kind. He made pasta for dinner. He let Lily stay up 45 minutes past her bedtime watching a nature documentary about otters, which she was obsessed with that month. And when she was finally asleep, he sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he used to sit in the dark. He sat there for a long time. But this time, it felt different. This time, he wasn't sitting in the absence of Diane. He was sitting with something new. Something that hurt, yes. But hurt the way stretching hurts, not the way tearing hurts. He was sitting with the full truth of her. All of it. The courage and the fear. The love and the withholding. The 26-year-old who almost didn't make it and the woman who had made it and built something extraordinary and then, too soon, had to let go. He was sitting with all of Diane. And for the first time in 2 years, that felt like enough. What happened to Carol? Marcus and I talked about this, and I want to be careful how I tell this part. Because this isn't a romantic story, and I don't want you to hear it that way. What Marcus and Carol have, 2 years after that coffee shop meeting, is a friendship. A real one. The strange, particular kind of friendship that can only be built on the foundation of a shared person you both loved. In completely different ways, for completely different reasons. and lost. Carol became someone Lily knows. Someone who comes to birthday dinners sometimes and brings too much food and has photographs of Diane that Lily had never seen and tells stories about her mother that Lily holds on to like treasure. Carol lost her husband. Her own loss. But her own long story. And Marcus has been the person who occasionally brings her soup when she's having a bad week and doesn't ask too many questions. They are, in the deepest sense, the family that Diane quietly arranged for them both to be. I asked Marcus once what he thought about the night on the highway. Whether he believed it was random. He thought about it for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know. I really don't. I'm not a mystical person. I'm an engineer. I believe in structures. I believe in things you can measure and verify." He smiled slightly. But I also know that I almost didn't stop, and Carol almost took a different road, and the tire was fine that morning and blown by evening. And somehow, of all the highways and all the nights and all the shoulders on all the roads in Tennessee, we ended up on the same 100 feet of asphalt at the same moment. He paused. So, maybe some things don't need to be measured. I think about Diane a lot. I think about the 26-year-old who sat in her car after a clear scan and wept because she didn't know how to be someone who was going to live. I think about the choice she made, over and over, every day of her marriage. The choice to step fully into her life instead of standing at its edge. I think about the letter she wrote. "The thing I want you to know is that you didn't fail me." That sentence. How many of us need to hear that from someone we've lost? How many of us carry the weight of wondering, did I do enough? Did I see enough? Did I love them the right way? Diane knew her husband well enough to know that he was asking those questions, and she answered them. In her own time, in her own way. Imperfect, complicated, undeniably human. She answered them. And a woman named Carol, who was 3 months overdue on a promise and driving on a bad spare tire on a road she hadn't planned to take, delivered the answer. On a cold shoulder of Interstate 40, on a Tuesday night in November, to a man who almost didn't stop. Life is strange, and grief is stranger. And love is strangest of all. Because love leaves instructions, even after the person is gone. Even after you think the story is over, love leaves instructions. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. Genuinely. From the bottom of my heart. Stories like this one take a lot out of me to tell, and they only mean something if someone is there to receive them. You were there. That matters. If this story moved you, if it made you think of someone you've lost, or someone you love, or some secret you've been carrying, or some truth you've been waiting to tell, I hope you'll take that with you today. And maybe do something with it. Call someone, say the thing, write the letter, and this time, finish it. If you're new here, please subscribe. We put out stories like this. Stories about real people, real moments, real love in all its complicated, imperfect, extraordinary forms. Hit the like button if this one meant something to you. It helps more people find us, and every single story on this channel deserves to be found. Leave me a comment. Tell me what this one brought up for you. I read every single one. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You probably already know who that person is. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.